And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
It could be time to kickstart the rebuild plan in Nashville. Brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice, Week 5, Mailbag Edition. Nick Alberga and Jake Hahn with you. What's going on, Jake?
Nick, I was going to say, I feel like things are going pretty well on the podcast this year, but if things go the other way, we might have to rebuild. So we'll get into that a lot more on this episode. Of course, brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
I'm feeling the heat, man. I won't lie. Some teams just can't bet on anymore, including the Nashville Predators. We're going to get to them. But coming up on today's pod, as per usual, we'll answer some of your mailbag questions. We'll also get to our customary betting segment with an added wrinkle this week, Jake. I always order cartons of milk on Skip. We're coming at you with a milk carton segment. I can't wait for this.
I have so many options for this segment, Nick. Guys that are just totally missing in action early in the season. It's not even early anymore. Like, it's not first couple weeks. Like, we're a month into this thing. You're not doing anything for us. You are on the milk carton, my friend.
It's funny because Pete Jensen framed it as biggest disappointments on social media. So that's I think the terminology we're going with. But teams, Jake, the Nashville Predators. Barry Trotz had some choice words. I think a mild threat for his team, saying they'll have to signify and activate a rebuild if they don't get cooking. Then they come out and lose to the red-hot Washington Capitals, although I thought the Preds were pretty good in that game, probably deserved a better fate. But what's going on with this team, Jake?
I thought they were decent in that game. Obviously, Washington's probably not the team that you want to play right now when you're desperate and you're looking for a win, because they just work really hard, and they did it again on Wednesday night. So, I mean, I don't know if Trotz chose his words not carefully enough, Nick. Like, it was one of those quotes that I saw the quote first, and I thought, I need to find the audio. There's no way he said the word rebuild. And sure enough, he said the word rebuild. So that doesn't make any sense to me, because even if you wanted to rebuild this roster, how it's constructed, you would not be able to do that. I think it's just a frustrated general manager that probably wants to get behind the bench right now and get these players going. So I don't know if we can find maybe some fantasy value in Nashville moving forward while everyone's a little bit down on this team.
Did I miss something in the offseason? They traded their top prospect, Yaroslav Askarov, to the Sharks for virtually nothing. They gave UC Saros an 8-year extension to be their number one goalie, and I picked him to win the Vezina Trophy this year as a result. I'm hurting right now, guys.
It was a dead threat. You guys are so bang on, because they're not rebuilding with the players they have on that roster. It's sort of crazy. A year ago, we were talking about the Preds being the upstart team. What a surprise. If you recall, Pete, I came on this podcast. I said Nashville was finishing bottom 5 in the NHL. Lo and behold, they make the playoffs. They were tough out in the playoffs, but I just don't like the direction. We talked about this in the offseason, Jake. Up the middle is where I question this franchise, and I think we're seeing that right now. We're seeing why Stamkos is getting some shifts at center. They're 4-8-1 through the first 13 games of the season. The big problem for them, they can't score at even strength, Jake. They have 21 even strength goals of the 31 they've scored this season. They're in trouble. I'll just say it right now.
I said I'm fearful coming into the year that they made one move too many. Like, you could sell me on Shea on the back end. I think he solidifies things a little bit. I've always really liked him as a defenseman. That's fine. You want to get one of Marchessault or Stamkos, you could sell me on that too, but you want to get two guys well into their 30s. I mean, and you mentioned it, Nick, down the middle of the ice, went out and got a couple guys that can play the wing and could shoot a little bit. I don't know. Barry Trotz, it's not looking good right now. It is still relatively early in the season. There's times to fix this, but the Central Division's already getting away from them. And Nick, do we play catch a falling knife with any of these Preds players on this roster while everyone's as down on them as possible? Do you think there's any value in maybe going out and targeting one of these Preds players?
I'll be honest, I've routinely not played that game, Jake. But to answer your question, I wasn't high on Forsberg this year. I wasn't high on O'Reilly. I think the only two players I would sniff around on Nashville right now, Roman Josi, who's got 7 points in 13 games, albeit a -10, and UC Saros. Everybody else, I'm staying away. Admittedly, I drafted Steven Stamkos, so I'm going to get burnt for that. It's just not going to work out in year number one, I think, with the Nashville Predators. But I'm probably out in general on this team.
He looks a little bit lost. I do still like Forsberg as a high-end player, though. Maybe it's tricky for him because last year he was clearly the puck-dominant guy. Like, I'm the guy, I'm going to take my 4, 5, 6 shots every single game. Now, you got Stamkos who wants to shoot. You got Marchessault who wants to shoot. Obviously, Yossi's always wanted to shoot on the back end, and I think maybe that's affecting Forsberg a little bit. So, can he go back to last year's Forsberg? I do think that's possible. That's what I would want to see if I was Nashville, Nick. But this is rough. And I mentioned the standings. Like, if you go pull up the standings, Dallas is legit, Winnipeg's legit, Minnesota looks legit right now if you're buying into that. Already early in the season, the Central Division's getting away from the Nashville Predators.
I just think your take was bang on. I think there's redundancy to what they added in the offseason. Guys like Stamkos and Marchessault, these are all trigger guys on the power play, but you already have Philip Forsberg, and I think they didn't go after what they needed, and that was help up the middle. Like Juuso Parssinen struggled. Tommy Novak was a health bomb on Wednesday. They're playing Stamkos at center. Ryan O'Reilly at this point in his career is not a first-line center, and that's in turn where I think you find your issue, specifically in that division. So Nashville, I'm looking at them the next little while, and this is going to be make or bust, I think, over the next 2 weeks here, Jake.
Well, you mentioned some of those young guys as well, Nick, and that's, you're telling those young guys that were really good for you last year, take a back seat. Like, you got to go play on the third line. You're not going to get that first power play time anymore because we're going to go out and get these shiny objects, these veteran players. And that's a tough conversation. Trotz had to know that. I mean, he's coached in the league for a very long time. He had to know that's what he was doing. So that's tricky. I think on a positive end, though, Nick, the team that beat Nashville on Wednesday, Washington is just becoming an awesome story this year. I don't know if it's taken you a little longer to buy in than I have, but I think I'm fully bought in on the way this team is playing right now. And the grade 8, Alex Ovechkin with a GWG on Wednesday.
One goal closer, another point for McMichael, Protas. I mean, everything we talked about on Monday just continues. I still think the regression candidates, I'm not a believer in their crease and Lindgren and Logan Thompson, and I think they're going to come back to earth. Dissimilar to maybe a couple other teams that have had hot starts. Like, if you're asking me right now, I'd believe in Washington or Winnipeg. I'm going to choose the Winnipeg Jets. But I think it's a fun conversation. It sort of came out of nowhere. I think a lot of people pegged the Washington Capitals to be a team that was going to be maybe fighting for a playoff spot. But they seem to be a team that's going to get a spot at the very least in the Metro. But again, there's a lot of time between now and the end of the season. But there's been some surprises, and you just wonder if maybe it's a good time to sell high on these guys.
It might be. Like, I mean, if you picked up Connor McMichael off the waiver wire like I did in a league, it would be, I mean, someone would probably offer you something decent for him right now. The guy is firing the puck. He's scoring every single game. So I would get that sell high angle. I just think watching them, they look legit. They're totally buying into what Carberry is selling. And there could be some regression like you hinted at, Nick. But I think confidence early in the season is sometimes all these teams need. You play well. You show that you can beat some good teams. And you could take it to teams as well. There's nothing fluky about what this team is doing right now. So I think I'm hanging on. And I think Connor McMichael's legit. And I think we got to start playing the Connor McMichael shot prop right now, Nick. You're still getting plus money for over 2.5. That's a money play right now.
Pretty damn good right now for the Washington Capitals. Let's get to some return reaction. Connor McDavid, I thought it was 2 to 3 weeks. He misses 3 games back in the lineup. Another L to the Vegas Golden Knights. Macklin Celebrini back in the mix for San Jose. Playing with Granlund and Toffoli on the top line, and Arturi Lehkonen, ho-hum. Colorado wins 6-3 in his season debut, 1 goal and 1 assist. Man, that's a prime spot with McKinnon and Rantanen and NPP1 for Lehkonen.
Yeah, I have thoughts on all of these. I think Lehkonen is really interesting to me, but I want to throw McDavid at you. Obviously, we know what McDavid is. I don't think we need to have the conversation of how great of a player he is, but for me, it's the surrounding cast. Like, who's going to play with McDavid long term this year, Nick? I've always been a big Jeff Skinner fan and a big Victor Arvidsson fan. It just, I don't know. I felt like McDavid, at least Wednesday night, was frustrated playing with Jeff Skinner. It just, the chemistry doesn't seem there. So again, maybe they let it play out and they see what works. I think Arvidsson with Draisaitl makes a little bit of sense to me. I could see that sticking, but I don't know. If you spent a pick on a Skinner or an Arvidsson, would you be a little concerned right now?
Absolutely. This is not Buffalo anymore, Jeff Skinner, right? You're with Edmonton, you're with the primetime, you're with the team that's slated to win the Stanley Cup, potentially the betting favorite at least. I'm absolutely scared. Arvidsson's a guy who missed significant time last year. I expected this. He's still shooting the puck. But chemistry is going to be a big concern anytime you bring in a bunch of different players. And I felt that Edmonton maybe did a bit too much. I think they're slower too. Like, that's my major league pickup on that team, is how much slower they are. I don't know if it's losing Broberg and Holloway and the juju to that team right now, but just something is off. It has an eerily similar feel to last season, if you recall that start for them. But I think it's buy time on a lot of these guys. They're just way too talented. They're going to score some goals. That power play is going to get clicking at some point.
I didn't pick Bouchard for our milk carton segment that's coming up, Nick, but I could have. I mean, he's not really popping it from the back end like we were expecting, but that could obviously change here very quickly. I wanted to touch on Lehkonen too. You mentioned him as one of the returning players. I think he got lost in the conversation a little bit. Like, we were all excited, myself included, about Val Nichushkin coming back. It looks like November 15th is going to be the date for that return for Val Nichushkin, but let's not forget how important Artturi Lehkonen is to this lineup, right? I'm sure you watched that game, over 22 minutes, goal and an assist. He looked really good to me. So I think if Lehkonen's still hanging out around there, he's somebody you absolutely have to scoop up, because I think he's going to be an integral piece for Colorado moving forward.
Must add, I mentioned this when Colorado won the Cup a couple years ago, that he was the biggest trade deadline pickup, and I maintain that. I think he's been a seamless addition, a perfect fit. I love him on that top line. It adds so much more depth when you have Nichushkin there, when you have Lehkonen there, Ross Colton healthy, and suddenly you start to wonder if, remember that tough start for the Colorado Avalanche, if they've turned a corner. I'll be quite honest in saying I think the goalie they have for the playoffs is not on their roster right now. I know Pete's big and Justus Annunen plus 5,000 to win the Calder Trophy. I just can't buy that. I can't trust him on a nightly basis. But man, what's flown under the radar is the hot starts for Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar. I believe they're 1-2 in the NHL in points right now.
5 apples for Nathan MacKinnon in that last game. All of a sudden, he wants to be a passer, but he's still scoring as well. So he's kind of just doing everything. He's running back what he did last year in that Hart Trophy season. The shots on goal for him are actually down a little bit, which is surprising because of how depleted Colorado has been, but I'd expect that to go back up at some point. He's been an absolute stud, and I was going to ask you that. Is it time to buy low on Colorado in general? Maybe not the individual players, but, do we sprinkle a cup future, something like that? Jump in on any of these awards markets for some of these players. You mentioned Pete interested in that Annunen number. Like, are you buying in on Colorado and maybe going to buy low on them in some of these games here coming up?
I'm lukewarm. I think another thing I would add is maybe them winning and coming back to win the Central Division. I think you can find a big number on that currently, especially with the start for the Winnipeg Jets. I think any team that has Nathan MacKinnon, he's just such a bulldog, Jake. He's going to find a way to bring this team. He did it last year with the Hart Trophy when you have Makar, and it sounds like he's a game-time decision for this game on Thursday. Crucial one, by the way, against the Winnipeg Jets. Big one in that division. I'm still lukewarm, and it's because of the crease. Georgiev's going to start on Thursday. They have Annunen. They have Kakkonen. That's a major league issue in this league. I don't care who's on your roster. If you cannot get a save, Jake, you're in big-time trouble. I don't know if you feel differently about this team.
They've had trouble defending, in my opinion, as well, right? It's not just the goaltending. Obviously, the goaltending has to shoulder some of the blame here, and you want to make that big save, that timely save. But I think defensively, they haven't really been good this year. So they're going to have to figure that out as well moving forward, help these goaltenders out a little bit. If they can do that, look, we know the ceiling of this team, Nick. They are capable of rhyming off 8 or 9 wins in a row and jumping up the standings and getting back into that conversation in the Central. I wouldn't say that about most other teams in that range, but Colorado is that team. When they get some bodies back, they have that ceiling potential and they can jump the board a little bit. So I am going to be trying to buy on them here, I think, the next couple of weeks. Maybe we start Thursday night in Winnipeg. Obviously, nobody seems to win in Winnipeg, but maybe Colorado can change that on Thursday.
They're due for a loss again. The Jets have lost once this season to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Colorado's got that game circled on their calendar. I expect it just to be crazy. I mentioned Cale Makar, undisclosed injury. He's a game-time decision. They're pegging it for that game. Internally, if Makar doesn't go, look at Devon Taves. Even Sam Malinsky's been running the second power play unit. Some other injuries right now, big-time injuries in the fantasy world. Austin Matthews, upper body injury. They're calling him day-to-day. I wouldn't be shocked if he misses a couple more games this weekend. Internally, I think the guy to look at there is Max Domi, who's on the top line with the red-hot Matthew Knies and Mitch Marner right now, Jake.
Good spot for Max Domi, a guy that's played with skill players before. It's a skill player in his own right. I mean, I think you were at the last game there against Boston. Nick, a couple of those toe drags he made on that one play, I'm like, oh, okay, who does Max Domi think he is? He wasn't able to finish on the play, but he's got a nice spot in that lineup. Who knew? I guess the power play's fixed all of a sudden that Austin Matthews isn't out, but with a back-to-back coming up this weekend, Friday and Saturday, they're doing the Hall of Fame weekend in Toronto. I wouldn't be shocked if they keep him out of both of those games. They're both beatable opponents with this lineup anyway. So if you have Matthews, I don't know if I would bank on him being on your roster over the course of the weekend, but things could change. I like your Domi call. Maybe a Bobby McMahon steps up and soaks up a few more minutes in that lineup.
Never take Max Domi shot prop, by the way. He just doesn't shoot
under.
the puck. It's really bizarre. And lastly, Braden Point, day-to-day lower body injury. Internally, Anthony Cirelli and or Nick Paul are two guys you want to look at that roster. It's time for our milk carton segment. Skip to the good part and get groceries delivered by Skip. Meals and essentials right to your door on Skip. We've been waiting for a couple days for this segment. I think it's going to be award-winning. Jake, why don't I go first with this, please, guys? Can I do that?
Please, lead us off.
All right, so this pains me because I love this guy. I've got a personal relationship with him. He's an absolute gem. He's a beauty. But the Ottawa Senators brought in a guy who won the Vezina Trophy 2 years ago with the Boston Bruins. He's either been unable to play, and when he does play, he's getting lit up. And it's the same old same for the Ottawa Senators. They go into Buffalo the other night. What is going on there? But Linus Ullmark is on my milk carton. 2.40, 3.02, an 892 save percentage. It's just not good enough, Jake. I'm just sorry to say it, and I love Linus Ullmark again.
It's not what Ottawa signed up for. And the first couple games, it looked pretty good. I'm like, okay, is he going to be the savior? He gets hurt, he comes back. Now the numbers aren't great, so it's got to get better. If Ottawa wants to make the playoffs, it needs to be better. Luckily, Nick, Skip delivered a nice, juicy milk carton right to my desk. I appreciate that from Skip. I looked at the milk carton, turned it over, and whose face is on it? One of my favorite players in the league, Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars. This is a tough one for me. Love this guy. Absolutely love watching him. He is a stud on the back end. I am not criticizing his overall play, but 4 assists on the season, no goals. I mean, come on, buddy. We got to put the puck in the back of the net. I need that offense from you so I can continue to support you on these fantasy podcasts. Come on, Miro. We got to get it going, buddy.
It really is bizarre when you look at Heiskanen, right? Because he came into the league, it seemed like he was ready to take that next step offensively. Then Klingberg was there, was really, really awkward. Then Klingberg left, and he just really never got cooking offensively. Pete, who's on your milk carton this week?
It's got to be Georgiev. I mean, I was talking about some of the things about UC Saros and the Predators. They've been disappointing, but look at some of these guys, right? Marchessault, high shot volume, only 2 goals. UC Saros, we know he's better than this. He will be better than this. And the shot attempts metrics of the Predators are still around the top 5 in the league. So Nashville will turn it around. I don't know if there's any moving forward here for Georgiev with how Annunen has played the past month.
I don't even know how to react, but you're so right. Like, when you think about Bus, he has been a bust for a couple years, and we talked about this, Pete, going into this season. If Georgiev can't figure out his game, there's going to be somebody new in that crease in Colorado right now. So I'm really fascinated to see what they do between now and the trade deadline. But those are 3 excellent names. I can't believe nobody mentioned Steven Stamkos, though. Like, we talked about him in the opening segment. He has been a big-time bust so far for the Nashville Predators. Like, I took him in my keeper league draft in the first round, and he's pretty much not doing anything, Jake.
I thought about it, but he saved himself with a goal late, right before the milk carton
did
segment.
it for you.
So you're off the hook for now, Stammer. But when we do this again, you might be on it.
Let's open up the mailbag, okay? Plenty of questions. Thank you for submitting via Instagram and all the social channels that Peter's running. Let's get to the questions. Brought to you by Skip, of course, Nicholas.
Yes. The first one I want to bring up, because I got a lot of people sneaking in the old DMs about Owen Tippett, my guy who I covered in Mississauga. I'm not ready to drop on that file just yet. And I won't talk about John Tortorella today and his 25-second scrum from the other night. But drop Owen Tippett for Matthew Knies is the first question of the mailbag, Jake.
Oh, I know you want to get into that Torts presser, but it's just classic Torts. I mean, how many times have we seen that? Like 100 times. So there's nothing new there. No, I would not drop Owen Tippett for Knies. And I really like Matthew Knies. I mean, he's going to get his fair share of minutes in that top 6. I don't think he's going anywhere. So I do like him as a fantasy asset moving forward, but to drop Tippett for him, I'm just not there. I think Philly's had some tough matchups here recently. Tippett's going to get some better matchups as we go along. Loves to shoot the puck. We know his goal scoring ability. I'm not giving up on this guy just yet, but if you could pick up Matthew Knies and drop someone else, I think I'd be okay with that, Nick.
That's exactly it. Matthew Knies is in a contract here. He's going to get paid. There's been some contract comparables, I should say, to Matthew Boldy. Like, he's really having a breakout season, but I don't want to have it happen at the expense of dropping Owen Tippett. I chalked this up to a slow start. This guy's been an absolute sniper for many, many years, dating back to his junior career, and I believe in Tippett. I don't know if I believe in the Philadelphia Flyers and that coaching staff right now, but we're not going to discuss that on today's podcast. We got some questions about keeper leagues. Somebody saying they have Michkov and Johnston who are dragging them down. Who do I drop? The simple answer for me, Jake, is nobody. I wouldn't drop any of those guys right now. We're like 15 games into the season. Relax, chill out.
Yeah, especially in a keeper league, right? I think you got to be even more patient. In a redraft league, I get it. You got that quick trigger finger. Maybe you're low in the standings, but even in those, I'd still stress patience for at least another month or so. Like, give it to American Thanksgiving. The classic adage we use when we're assessing NHL teams. Maybe use the same for your fantasy team. I've got a Wyatt Johnston related question here for you as well, from a listener. How much patience can we have with Wyatt Johnston? I thought about putting him on the milk carton, Nick. It's not great for him. I'm going to give him a little bit more time here to figure it out, but Wyatt Johnston, it's not happening for him in Dallas right now.
It would be like similar to, like, when you're waiting at the polls and there's a big line, you have to vote. That's it. That's the biggest comparison I can make. You just got to chill out. You got to wait. You got to vote. I think the body of work, what we've seen from the player and early on in his career, Jake, like, I have to ride with him. There's nothing that I haven't seen that I was like, I'm not interested in that file. So I'm all over Wyatt Johnston. I think actually it's a good time to buy low on this guy, if you can believe it.
Guys, I got one from Instagram. Will Martin Necas be a point-per-game player the rest of the season? Have you seen his numbers? He's been arguably the hottest player in the entire league over the past week of the season. Does he have staying power?
I saw this one, Pete, and I had a lot of interest in it. This guy is a horse right now. When you watch Carolina Hurricanes games, he can just completely take over. So, I mean, point per game is difficult, but I don't see why not. The way they use him in the key situations, late in games, 3-on-3 overtime, he is an animal as well. Him and Aho, when they get out there, they scored that late goal against Philly earlier this week. So I think it's legit. And yes, to answer the question, Nick, I do think Party Marty can keep the party going all year and be a point per game player.
I like that nickname. Don't forget 2 years ago, he had 71 points in 82 games, including 28 goals. I think he's in for a career year. And it's sort of amazing. Sometimes the decisions you don't make are the best ones that work out in the long run. There was a lot of conversation about Necas being traded this past summer. He wasn't. They signed him. 11 games, 7 goals, 13 assists, 20 points. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of regression there. Always careful, guys, with the Carolina Hurricanes because there's so much depth and they're not afraid to use all 4 lines. But I believe in Martin Necas. I think he's a guy who's primed for like a breakout season. There's less pressure, less stress of the contract. He's feeling good about life. And Jake, I feel like Carolina's flown under the radar in general. They're having a pretty decent start. I still wonder about their crease. Freddie Anderson's hurt right now. Kochetkov, I own him every time, gets the win, but it lets like 4 goals on 17 shots. I hate that.
Well, everyone was calling for the demise of the Carolina Hurricanes. Maybe I shouldn't say everyone, but a fair chunk of the population thought maybe they open up a spot in that Metropolitan Division. Not the case. This Canes team is well coached under Rod Brind'Amour. Maybe they lost some pieces on the back end, but up front, at least from a fantasy perspective, I think that this team could be a gold mine this year. Seth Jarvis, we just talked about Necas. Obviously, Aho's a stud too. Maybe we could find some other value in there. I think Carolina is going to generate a lot of offense this year, guys.
Guys, edge stat alert. I love it. Martin Necas, not only in the top 10 in max skating speed, but also 20-plus mile-per-hour speed bursts. So, low-key, one of the fastest players in the entire league.
Working on our sound effects here on the podcast. I love that. Love the Carolina Hurricanes in general. And maybe you take a flyer on a futures look with them.
What do we have as far as the wagers go, fellas? Let's go around the horn. Let's look at some futures. Let's look at some, spots we like. Nicholas, go ahead.
I'm going to cook with Thursday's card. Calgary at Boston. The Bruins got to win some games. I think Jimmy Montgomery could be in trouble there, believe it or not. So I like the Boston money line against Calgary and the Islanders, Ottawa Senators under. Jake, what are you looking at?
Speaking of unders, maybe we go under in that Bruins game that you mentioned because they cannot score a goal, but they can defend pretty well. I even thought 5-on-5 they were pretty good against the Maple Leafs the other night. It was the Leafs power play that kind of got them in that game. A couple shutouts on the weekend before that, so maybe we play some Bruins unders here moving forward. The LA Kings guys are playing some real high-level hockey. They do this every year. They suck me in for like a month every year, and the Kings play this great style. They get Vancouver, and they're a home dog tonight. I don't know if I understand this one. Kind of a fishy line. Give me the LA Kings as a home dog tonight, guys.
We have some tasty matchups over the next couple days. You mentioned the Hall of Fame game, Leafs in Detroit. We got Ovechkin against Crosby on Friday. I might play the shot prop parlay between those two, maybe a point parlay. And you see what's coming up on Saturday, Jakey boy. You got Ottawa at Boston. Allmark against Swayman, the battle of the best friends. Maybe you take a peek at the under in that game.
Do we just go back to the under? I just said it with the Bruins game for Thursday night, so maybe we just continue to play that angle. And I mean, Bruins unders have been hitting here recently, so that probably is the move. I mean, can I tempt you in a St. Louis on Thursday night? Kind of a pick 'em against Utah. I don't know. I'm lukewarm on Utah. I like them a lot early in the year. Kind of come back down to earth. They've dealt with some injuries. St. Louis can also be a very tricky team to figure out, but I'm leaning the way of the Blues as a pick 'em on home ice.
Yeah, I call them Pukta because they can't play defense, man. I own Connor Ingram, man. It's been a tough show there, and we'll see if they can solidify their back end. Those are two major losses in Marino and Sean Dursey there, and I just wonder about Utah moving forward this season.
You guys are going to love this one. You guys are absolutely going to soak this thing up like a rag you have in the laundry. How about this? Heading into MSG, Bob Bender is going right back to the well. He's going to do it. He vowed he wouldn't do it, but the Buffalo Sabres at plus 170. I'm doing it. I am doing it. I'm going to do it, and that's all I'll say. All right, the number seems right to me. I think there's some value on the Sabres going into MSG tonight. How about that?
Pete, did you like that or what?
Pete's the Sabres whisperer here. He's got to have a take on this.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Their road record does not look too good this season, but any given game they could bring it. I agree. The number has ballooned a little bit. The Rangers look like one of the best teams in the league, but they're not invincible. So good thinking there, Bobby. Going against the grain.
I'm going against the grain on that one, but I do see Jake's angle on the Kings at home. Yes, the line seems a little fishy. I do like the angle that Jake has on the Kings. Peter?
I'm looking at what Jack Roslovic has been doing from the Carolina Hurricanes. Most people probably don't even know that he joined them in the offseason, but he's tied with Nietzsche for their lead in goals with 7 this season. He's got no assists so far this year, but he's playing with Svechnikov and Aho, so I think that's going to change. Maybe look at the assist prop for Jack Roslovic, or maybe even the first goal scorer prop, playing with 2 guys that good. You can get plus 1,400 on Jack Roslovic to score the first goal tonight against the leaky Pittsburgh Penguins.
Petey props. Petey, what else you got? And then let's put a bow on it, okay? Because I know you're itching to get to this. You want to get to this. You tried to get to it earlier. I had to nix it. I had to do a little post-production, had to nix it. So just get it out of your system, and then Nick can put a bow on it.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys, we got a fan question about Connor McDavid for the Art Ross. The odds have narrowed since yesterday considerably, but I'm seeing like around plus 400 for him for the Art Ross. You could also look at him in the Hart Trophy conversation. It's still early, only a month. Or you could look at him in the Rocket Richard, like for ballooned odds, plus 2,200, I see. What's your favorite angle, Nick?
This guy's a freak. Art Ross is probably the way I would go. The Hart Trophy, I think, is going to be difficult because Connor McDavid has different standards, whether anybody wants to admit it or not in this league. He has to go above and beyond. So I think it's got to be the Art Ross race, Jake, where I think easily McDavid can come back and have a couple 3-4 point games in a row, and Eureka, he's right back in the conversation. So, Jake, that's probably the angle I would play here.
If I had to play one, it probably would be that. He would need some help, though, guys. As much as he could do that, what you just said, and go 3-4 point games, we know he's capable of that. Absolutely. He would need these top dogs to slow down. And look, we all watched what Nathan McKinnon and Nikita Kucherov did all season last year. Who's to say they can't just run it back? They're at least the way they're starting this year, they're picking up right where they left off. So I think he would need a little bit of help. It would be a challenge, but I would never put anything past 97 in Edmonton.
And I got one more on the futures look. Minnesota Wild visit the Sharks. Sharks have won 4 out of 5. Which angle do you guys like better from a future standpoint? Macklin Celebrini to win the Calder. He's got a little time and ground to make up, but I think he has a good chance to catch up with Stankoven or Michkov, or Kirill Kaprizov for Hart Trophy. He's among the NHL scoring leaders. So which one you like more?
I know where Nick is going with this one. I know he likes Kirill Kaprizov, right? Because he's already sitting on that ticket. He's keeping it nice and warm, and it's looking pretty good right now. I would go Macklin Celebrini for the Calder personally, because I think we all understand, okay, he hasn't been there. He's only played a couple of games. He's been good in both of those 2 games, small sample size. And while he was away, Nick, no one really ran away with it. Some guys did some good things, but nobody, pounced on that Calder. So I think it's still there for the taking for Macklin.
I like your angle. I just wonder who's going to get in the puck in San Jose, man. That roster is just not good. Toffoli's off to a good start. They got some good, decent players, but like even Pete's boy Jake Wallman is having a great offensive, stretch, and then he gets a health bomb. Like you just don't know what you're going to expect from San Jose. And I think at this point I know what I'm going to expect from Minnesota. Again, they make the playoffs. That's what that team does. Kaprizov's having that type of start where he's on the map at the very least. The hockey world is talking about him, and I think it's going to be somebody in Kaprizov. If you recall a couple years back, Jake, like he was in contention for that Hart Trophy in, say, the last 10 games of the season. But, yeah, I'm with you on that front. I don't think the Calder is spoken for 15 games into the season, that's for sure.
No, I don't. And I love Logan Stankoven. I think he's an excellent player. But in that Dallas offense, we talked about it on this pod with Wyatt Johnston and Miro Heiskanen, and these guys kind of struggling. They spread things out so much. I think it could hurt Stankoven in certain areas, whereas Celebrini's top line, top power play, as long as he's healthy, he's getting those minutes. And even though, like you said, maybe he doesn't have the guys to get the puck to him, the minutes are going to be there. I think he's got all the capabilities of taking it this year.
I got to fly. I got to go listen to an NHL induction class hosted by Kenny Albert. He sits down with all the inductees from the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2024, the likes of Jeremy Roenick, Shea Weber, Natalie Darwitz, David Poyle, and others. And coming up on Monday, Week 6 waiver wire edition of NHL Fantasy on Ice. So many thanks to producer Bob Bender, for Jake Hahn and Pete Jensen. I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good parts and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.